So far we're doing okay. It's still not quite what we want, but unfortunately we're going to start to see a slower rendering time here as we move on. Our next section is underwater light rays. And you know, if we were underwater and we would like to see rays kind of blaring through the water, giving it that kind of eerie look there. So those are rendering out, rendering environment. There we go. Under atmosphere, we're going to add volume light this time. If you remember from animation 1, we vaguely did a little bit of work with volume light, and that's sort of it's light that has like dust particles in it. Now we already have a light source in the scene, so we're simply just going to add the volume light. This doesn't create light, it adds the volume to the light. Let's change some parameters here. First we have to pick the light. Well, we only have one light, so let's go pick our MR spotlight. Next we want to set the density to 7, so we're going to increase this a little bit. You'll also be able to come in and play around with these settings at a later date. Maybe you want more light rays, less light rays, whatnot. Now we're going to do a test render here, and this is probably going to take a few seconds, but what you're going to notice is we have so much volume light in the scene right now, we've totally washed it out. This is not what we want. What we can tell from this rendering is that we do have an area of light that's kind of defined. So what I need to do is first I need to widen the light a little bit so that it kind of extends a little farther beyond my visible area. When I select the light, you'll notice that the cone kind of collides. So I'm going to go ahead into my light properties real quick, and I'm going to go ahead and up the spotlight parameters a little bit. The hot spot and the fall off, I'm going to increase those out just a little wider. Now that's still not going to fix my washout. What we're going to do next is we're going to put imagine that we had a real light up there and we were able to put a filter. Think of the Batman symbol. When they shoot light up into the sky for the Batman symbol, they put a big bat symbol in the middle of the light and it shows that symbol. We're going to do something very similar to that. We're going to put a noise map that projects off of the light, so it's going to block parts of the light, kind of breaking it up a little bit. Unfortunately, the bumps we have in our water will not do that. In real life it would, but we're going to create that illusion by using the same bumpy texture to block the lighting here, and that's going to break it up. It's going to be a really nice illusion here that you can use. You can use it underwater, you can use it above water. If you want to do what they call God rays coming out of the sky with clouds, you'd accomplish it this way. So I got my light selected. I'm going to open up its modify panel, which I already have because I adjusted the spotlight parameters. Under intensity, color, and attenuation, I'm going to click on that little color box. That's going to give me the swatch panel here. I'm going to change my red color to 32, my green to 137, and my blue will stay at 255. So I've got like a blue light. That's going to help a little bit. Go ahead and hit OK. Farther down where it says far attenuation, we want to use it. And again, these numbers are going to vary, but we're going to do start 430 we'll start with, and we're going to end at 650. And I'm going to explain to you here in a minute what these do, and then you'll be able to adjust yours. Now you'll see that the start is the dark blue, the end is the light blue. And that is telling us where the light source is going to reach. We want that to come down a little bit more, I think. So we can do a couple of things. We can bring the light source down, and that'll probably work right there. Let's give that a try. Now let's save, because as you can probably imagine, with all these crazy things that we've been doing here, the rendering is going to start getting a little slower and crashy. Now we're seeing that we still haven't broke up. We haven't used that image map yet, but you're going to see that we do have the light is kind of limited now. It's putting more light down here and less light up here. So again, that'll be adjustable. And in fact, I'm going to cancel this rendering so we can go in and do the next spot. Under Advanced Effects, you'll find that under the Modify panel of the light. Okay, so we're under Advanced Effects. You're going to see the word Projector Map down here. And that's simply going to be, again, this is a really cool tool, we're simply going to project an image out of that light or block it with like a filter. So we're going to select Map, hit None, and we're going to go out and we're going to find Noise. Remember, again, noise is what we use to kind of displacement map. We're going to do the same with the lighting. Just like we've been doing lately, we can't alter a map over here in the rollout, but we can alter it here in the material editor. So click, drag it to an empty slot, instance it, and there we go. We're in good shape. Now we have all these properties that we can change. Under the coordinates, and you see the word source, we're going to change object XYZ to explicit map channel. You notice that changed its properties. Under the noise parameters, we're going to pick turbulence. We're going to pick level 10. And the size we're going to make very small, 0.5. Where it says low, we're going to do a 0.35. And if we want more light rays, we can bring that number up a little bit. Okay. I'm sorry, decrease that number. So the more light rays, now the more light rays you have, the longer the rendering is going to take. So keep that in mind. Oh, well, I'll go with what I said in my study guide there, and I'll go with 0.35 for now. Let's save. Let's test it out. Now what I'm going to do to save some time here, I'm going to go ahead and hit pause on the video and let this thing render out, and then we'll discuss briefly what has happened with the changes. After this, we'll have one more step. Now that rendering took a good 15 minutes. Now that was one frame we were just talking about, so 15 minutes, one frame. So you're going to understand that before you even think about animating this, you want to get this right the first time. You can notice how the light is starting to streak a little bit. We do have some issues here. I think what's happening is some of the light, while I'm looking at this, back here, this beam of light, is this part of the light peeking off. So what I could do to correct that, and I'm not going to re-render it again, we'll move on to the next step and then we'll tweak at the end. But to fix that is I would probably go ahead and cut down the hot spot a little bit, and then the fall off even more. I think my fall off was a little on the high side there. Okay, remember, fall off is just sort of that fade between the actual light source and where it dissipates. That would probably correct that gigantic beam back there. Okay, the other thing I'd probably do is bring this down a little bit. Okay, my end attenuation is going to come a little farther. I want it to extend beyond my view. Alright, and I would probably like, if I'm not mistaken, to start it a little higher. Okay, start it above there, so the beam is just covering from here to here. Okay, so that's how we tweak these things, and we want to get them right the first time, but that's not always going to be the case. So we're going to move on to our last spot, and that of course is going to be creating the underwater bubbles, which we'll kind of give it a little illusion. Again, it's going to be like a fake bubble, but it's still going to work for us, I think, in the long run. Our last section here, though, we're going to go ahead and just work with a basic particle system. And again, this should be a review for you. We're going to create a particle cloud. And what the particle cloud is pretty much going to do is just going to be in the area that we can physically see. And a particle cloud, remember, it's sort of like a box, almost like a fish tank. You can change different sizes, but I think we'll go ahead with a box. It's going to be the easiest one here. create geometry, standard. We're going to go down that list to the particle systems. And we see P cloud. Again, that's short for particle cloud. Go ahead and take the P cloud, and if you want, maybe just go in your front view if that helps. Drag it to the overall width there. You can come out a little bit, it's not going to hurt. And then we'll expand it. Remember, we can also change the properties of this particle cloud size-wise and amount of particles here. But I would make it only about the size. Now, if you're going to animate the camera looking around the scene, then you're going to obviously have to work with keyframing the environmental ranges to change over time. So when you move the camera one way, you know, maybe make your plane bigger, which will work. It's going to stretch out your displacement. But these are all factors you have to consider when you go to animate this. Depending on how you want to animate it. Are you just going to have a camera sitting still with something moving in, or you can have the camera moving around the water? And we'll talk about animation here at the very end. So with the particle cloud, we're going to go ahead and look at its properties. Go to modify. And remember, particle cloud doesn't have a heck of a lot of different things we can do with it here, so we won't be in here too long. The basic parameters here under the display icon. Okay, you see that? The rad length, that'd be radius or length depending on if you're using a box or sphere. I think I had 230. That's a little bigger, yeah. Width 700 and the height is 480. So I was pretty close. That's just a number. And it looks like I might have to rotate that around. There we go. So my dimensions were slightly off, and I'll have to make that change. Next, we're going to go with the particle generation. So we open up the particle generation pullout, and where it says use total, we're going to crash the computer here. Let's do 1,000. All right. Now remember, if you remember anything about particle systems here, our viewport display mine's set to 100. If you're afraid that this may crash, you could always take that down a number. That way your viewport's not showing you quite as many, but there's a lot of bubbles there. From experience, I've had a lot of people say, hey, you know, got lots of bubbles here, but when they render, they're very disappointed. They can't seem to get them to show up. And that's kind of a lot to do with the material and everything we're going to work with here. However, let's go ahead and stick with 1,000 for now. We can always make that change. Now, if you plan on animating this thing, the bubbles are going to need to move. You're going to have to turn the speed up a little bit. Don't go too crazy. You know, 10 will make them move a little bit. You don't want them moving very fast. You don't want them flying around. Bubbles don't do that. Under particle timing, we're looking at that as an emit start of -10. The reason why we're doing that is because when we go to animate, okay, we want the bubbles already in the scene, kind of doing their thing before the rendering starts. If we did 0, then the particles would be sitting at a dead stop and start moving with the animation that would look very fake. Okay, so we're just kind of setting up, it's like somebody running before the camera turn on. It's no big deal. Emit stop, we can go ahead and just leave that at 0. But notice we have more particles now because the generation's set up. Now we're also going to talk about the timeline here. If you want to go with, you know, I would change the timeline right now while we're talking about animation, 300. I would not go any more than 300. You're going to be talking about a lot of rendering time involved, and even our systems at Terra will, we don't want to tie them up with just one, you know, one small 10-second clip. So we'll see how that goes. The life, we want them to live 300 because we want them to live just as long as that, but we also want the display to be 300. Alright, we'll go down to here. We'll look at particle size. We're going to go to 1.5. Make them a little bigger than standard. The variation is going to be 100%. We want these things to be all kind of different sizes. We want them to be big, small. We don't want them all the same size. Bubbles are always, there's a variation in bubbles. We don't want them to grow or fade though. Bubbles don't grow or fade. I mean, technically, I guess they do, but we're not going to mess with that at this point. Under particle type, we're just going to go with a standard particle sphere. Now, again, if you recall animation 1, spheres are the most complex of the standard particles. Now you're talking about having all of these little dots becoming spheres. That's a lot of bubbles. So, to make matters worse, we're going to put a clear material on that, a reflective glass material, and that's going to make it look like bubbles. And of course, if you remember that light traveling through all those the bubbles is going to create for a longer render. So this is the maximum amount of bubbles I would go with. I would not go any more. In fact, I think I'd rather turn them down. Let's make a material for this, and then we'll do a final render. I'll come over here, grab an empty slot. I'm going to click my Get Material button, and I'm going to go out to my Mental Ray Architectural Design, and under the template, I'm going to look for Glass Solid Geometry. It's going to make a decent bubble. I'm going to apply that to the particle cloud. I'm just going to click and drag it out here into the scene so it touches on there. Now you really want to push the limits of the computer with the particle cloud selected. Okay, you can come over here to the viewport settings, and where it says mesh, by clicking mesh, you're actually going to change all of those into the spheres. Now again, if your computer's not capable of doing that, you definitely want to save first. But this is pretty much what we're going to be looking at, the final render. That's a lot of bubbles. So I'm going to take that use rate down to 500. I don't need that many bubbles. You might want them. Could also probably turn our speed down a little bit now that I'm thinking about it, because that's going to create, there we go. That's not too bad, nice and slow. All right, we're done with the still rendering, which you'll print off. You'll create a still rendering for me. Now, what do you do beyond this? Well, that's your call. That's where your creativity comes in. I'll give you an example. I would go out and create a we'll go out and do a extended perimeter. We'll do chamfer box. I'll throw a little chamfer box in there. Okay, now what's happening here? I'm lagging. And the reason why I'm lagging is because I have so much geometry in my scene right now, I'm probably going to crash the computer. So what I will recommend is once you're ready to start developing your scene, I would wait to do the particles. Yeah, there we go. It caught up finally, but I would select the particles. Let's do that real quick. See if it'll let me do that. I'm going to grab those particles, okay, that particle cloud. I'm going to right click and hide that selection. Let's get the, now we can move freely. We can work with a chamfer box. All that I'm thinking is you can go ahead and add a lot of segments to that. I'll say 10, 10, something like that. Go into your edit mesh and just start moving that thing all around. Do a little spike there, a little spike here. What we're really doing here is just kind of making some kind of rock formation is all I'm really trying to do. Let's maybe add some more segments, noise, do some rotating, scaling, just have some fun with it. Just the uniqueness factor. Looks like all these particles or all these components are very large compared to my scene, so I'm going to go ahead and cut that down. But take a few moments to build some rocks, put in some plants, that kind of stuff. All right, get yourself some kind of scene. I've had a lot of people do sharks, find sharks out on the web, plants. Now, when we're talking about animating, there's a couple ways to animate. One, take your light and keyframe your light turning. Okay, as you spin that light, all right, your light rays are going to move. That is natural. We want the light rays to move. Number two, water. What does water do? Well, you can do a couple different things. You can wave. You can keyframe the wave modifier just by bouncing some amplitude up and down to create that wave effect. Okay, again, you're keyframing it. Also adjusting the wavelength would kind of give it that ripple look. We can also go in to noise. And what you can do is keyframe noise over time. You see how the mesh is starting to change as I adjust. Now, the Z is going to give you the most. It's going to give you the most up and down motion. So again, picking various points and adjusting the Z up and down. A combination of that, moving the light, is going to give you the illusion that the water is moving, along with the moving bubbles. So that is going to be the animation. It's going to be up to you to set that up in the render queue up there at Terra, or at home if you actually have a computer capable of doing that. And do a quick animation. Again, the requirement for this is I really think we're going no more than 5 seconds, if that. So you're really looking at a minimum of 100 frames. If you can give me up to 300 frames, give me plenty of time to look at it, that'd be awesome. I've had other people put letters in the water and have the letters bob up and down. Okay, some people have created a path and had like a animal, fish swim around. Again, your call. Be unique though. Try to find something new that nobody's done before, and do a nice rendering of it for me.